Good to go?
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back to Open Up with Lockie Samuel, and today's episode with my cuddle buddy from 2019. I might get you to explain that. So I've had a few people ask me on some of our comments what that means. But you're someone who, I really love and appreciate because of the way that you showed up last year, the courage, and obviously the way that you've showed up in the Kaboom coaching container really sort of set the standard for us initially. Showed me what courage looked like in terms of backing yourself. And so first of all, besides letting people know that your name is Briana Bowley, is I just want to acknowledge you for that straight up, because I don't think that's something that I've really given you kudos for or praise for, or the praise that you deserve anyway. So thank you so much for showing up as this powerful feminine beast. You're amazing.
Thank you. Bless. What a start. Oh, I'm fully receiving that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. So cuddle buddy, where does that come from?
Oh God. Okay. So you and I, of course, met at a course in November last year. And one of the practices was, just being fully willing to receive love from another, and that involved eyes closed, open posture, having not a complete stranger in most cases, but having someone come up and just give you a cuddle. And, we kind of had the pick of a group, and you were the one that I picked. So, that's where Cuddle Buddy stems from. We had, 5 minutes or a couple of songs worth of just a hug. So, and just practicing really, first of all, for the person being hugged, receiving, and for those of us giving the hug, getting to really practice giving. So
yeah, and that was a beautiful experience too, because I think going into that I was like a very closed off man on a heart level. I thought I had done all the work because my mind was running the show. I was like, fuck it, I'm healed, I'm coming here healed. And I got there and I realized how broken I was and how wounded I was.
Yeah, and I remember picking you out because I was like, he looks like he needs a hug.
And I'm so glad you did too. And what made that even better was that I had no idea who hugged me.
Yeah.
Until maybe after that workshop, that weekend, I was like, fuck, I'm sure it was you.
Yeah, well, I think I did eventually come up and tell you. And, it was so funny because, I got to witness your transformation. And, you accepted the hug, but I could still feel that there was a wall there. And even when I did tell you it was me, you were like, oh, okay. And I was like, you're still not really receiving it. And then at the very end of the two different weekends, it was like, there he is. It was like that wall just collapsed. So it was beautiful to witness.
Yes. So thank you for being that person for me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's dive into your story. Obviously, overcoming adversity, but I think you wanted to touch on homelessness, and this is something that sort of it shocked me a little bit, to be honest. At the end of that first weekend, you're just this really powerful, outgoing woman who seemed like she had a lot going for her, and then at the end of that weekend, you're like, oh, I'm actually living in my car or something. I was just baffled.
Yeah.
Baffled by that. So I'd love to know more about what you've been through in regards to that.
Yeah, for sure. So, for me, I've run my own business for coming up for 8 years now. And, through those 8 years, it's been a real process of peaks and troughs in terms of finances. And, I think when we met, I was really getting to the final straw of that, of something's got to give. I've got to figure this thing out because I can't keep living like this. I can't keep living from a place of, not really being able to financially support myself. And so, of course, before I came up to Queensland for the workshop that you and I met at, I was still living in South Australia. At the time, I'd sort of moved out of my mum's house, and I'd been living with my mum for most of the time that I was working for myself. And I made the decision to move out, and basically, because this is kind of how I do things, just throw myself off the cliff and force myself into figuring it out. And so, I I was kind of couch hopping and living with generous friends for quite a long period of time, and then made the decision to come up to the Gold Coast and spent 2 months road tripping up, living out of my car, so sleeping in the back seat. And then, got to the Gold Coast and kind of did a little bit of the couch hopping thing again. And like I said, it was really a practice in just forcing myself so deeply into my own edge and so far out of my comfort zone that it was like, I've got to figure this, I have to figure this out, because I wasn't willing to go down the path of, basically selling my soul for a job that didn't light me up. So really that was my only choice. So that was where I was at.
So what was, when you talk about selling your soul for something that didn't light you up, what was the narrative, or what were you being pushed towards? And I guess what was pulling you in the other direction?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the entire time I've ran my own business, I've been told from friends, family, peers, strangers that, first of all, working as a coach, first of all, that I'm too young. I started coaching when I was, what am I now? I'm 27. So I started coaching when I was 19.
Wow.
And I often got the backlash from people, strangers saying, well, you're 19 years old. What could you possibly be able to teach me about the world? Which is funny to me, because I think that anyone, every person has something to teach us. So that perspective in itself kind of tells me that they could probably learn a lot from me. And then I had, family and friends telling me that I needed to get in the real world and stop living this pipe dream, that I could make this coaching business work. And that, essentially I needed to go and get a job that was stable, and that, sort of sacrifice the freedom and the love of what I do for the money. And that's something that just in no way did it align with me. I'm someone so driven by doing what I love and doing what feels true for me, regardless of how much money I do or don't make. And so, it just wasn't a path I was willing to go down. I couldn't bring myself to go and get a real job.
What makes you that resilient? Like, is it something you were brought up with, or is it something that you had to learn?
That's a great question. I honestly, to me, it's not resilience. To me, it just comes down to I don't have a choice. Like I dabbled a few times over those 8 years of, going back to personal training and getting, super casual jobs where, it might be 1 or 2 days a week. And within the first 2 weeks, I was just so fed up and drained. And I'm just not someone who, I can't have a boss, like I'm not someone who can run on someone else's schedule or be told what to do. So every single time I did go and get a job, within, a month or two, I was, basically like, fuck me, like I'm done with this, So really it comes down to, I wouldn't say it's resilience as much as it's just, I didn't have a choice.
So as a 19-year-old, how do you handle people not agreeing with your direction and not believing in you? Like, how do you instill the self-belief in yourself to keep pushing forward?
My vision was so big that, again, and I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but I knew what I wanted for myself. I knew there was something deep within me that knew that there was something more than how the masses were living. I witnessed so many people who were just, they'd wake up, they'd go to a job that they hated to make money, which they never really had the time or freedom to even spend on doing something that lit them up, and then they'd come home miserable, go to bed, wake up and do the same thing over and over again. And I just saw, I watched the masses just, like I said, sell their souls and walk around almost like zombies. That watching that, I was like, it's not for me. I'm someone who's so deeply driven by adventure and curiosity and seeing the world and learning about the world and learning about myself. And so it was that vision of creating a life revolving around that kept me going. And so even, I remember really, there were a lot of moments where I doubted myself deeply. There were a lot of moments where I was like, is this all just a pipe dream? Am I crazy? Am I, you know, am I living a fantasy? Do I need to wake up and get my shit together? But the vision was just too important to me to let it, you know, fall away because of self-doubt.
For someone else who is in that position, because like we've been through a coaching container where there are ups and downs, especially even with experienced coaches, there are ups and downs. So for someone in that position who's stepped into coaching and it's something that they really want to do, it's something that I guess makes them feel alive or lights them up, and they're in that place where they're really doubting themselves and considering whether or not this is a pipe dream, is there any advice you'd give them in terms of making sure that vision is solid so that they can, I guess, stay steadfast and not sell their soul?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I would say get super crystal clear on exactly how you want your life to look, so that you've got that, you know, that marker of where you're heading. I think all too often people, they know they want something better, but they have no idea what that looks like. And so,
Yep.
you know, it's sort of like they're feeling around in the dark. Whereas, you know, when we can put that pinpoint there and that thing to work towards, that end goal, we can sort of start to, you know, course correct and navigate our way there. And more than anything, I would say, you know, be really intentional with your environment. I think for me, the real game changer has been being around people who get it, people who think the same as me, whether that be, you know, friendships, whether that be peers, whether that be coaches. You know, in a lot of cases, I found myself, particularly in the early years, not being able to find people who did think the same way or did have a similar vision that they were striving towards. So, you know, that was a real point of struggle for me. So instead, I went out and I invested in getting coaches who had what I wanted, you know, and they became the people who, even when the rest of my environment was telling me that, you know, I was crazy, the coach, you know, those coaches were the ones who could sort of keep me coming back to myself and keep me checking back in on what was true for me, rather than, you know, always going outside of myself.
I love that. What was your vision that you held on to?
For me, it's always been about traveling the world. Like I said, I'm someone really deeply driven by curiosity. You know, I think the more we get to experience the outside world, the more we get to experience ourselves, and vice versa. The more we open up ourselves, the more, you know, we get to really drop in with what's right in front of us. And so, you know, it all centered around that. Honestly, I just wanted to take in as much of life as I possibly could.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so cool. What pulled you towards coaching? Was it the fact that you could do it remotely and do it all over the world?
So I was a personal trainer, and through working as a personal trainer, I had a lot of weight loss clients, and I'm talking, you know, 50 plus kilo weight loss success stories. And with those clients, I was witnessing how much, you know, they'd go from really morbidly obese to, you know, about 80 kilos, like an average sort of weight. And yet, even though so much had changed physically, nothing had sort of changed up here. So they still had this belief that they were overweight, you know. And I remember this one particular moment with a client of mine where he had lost 50 kilos. So he'd gone from 130 kilos down to 80 kilos. And his next goal was to be able to do a pull-up. And so I got him on the assisted chin-up machines. So they're the ones, you know, where with the platform and whatever else. And I said, you know, jump on and we'll start off with, you know, assisted pull-ups and work up from there. And I could tell by the look on his face there was big resistance there. And so I sort of checked in and was like, what's going on for you? And he said to me, I don't want to break the machine. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I'm too heavy. I'm going to break it. And it occurred to me in that moment that even though he was 80 kilos, which is, you know, a pretty average weight for a guy, he still had it in his head that he was walking around at 130 kilos. And so that kind of propelled me into this process of, I went into fitness modeling and went through my own pretty significant weight loss journey. And because I wanted to understand what it was like to, you know, to lose a whole bunch of weight and to previously be this person and suddenly be this other extreme, you know, in terms of physical transformation. And yeah, I started to realize the missing link was what was going on up here, what was going on mentally. And so, yeah, I just started self-educating, and eventually that became my greatest love.
That's amazing. And it seems like that's a transition that a lot of PTs are going through at the moment, going from this person who is all about the macros and making sure you count all those, and like heavily in, I guess, the identity of it. And then they're making this transition, having these realizations that it's more about mindset and the patterns and I guess the limiting beliefs and self-sabotage that I guess contribute to the physical state that that person is in. So that's really cool. Tell me more about your journey with weight loss.
So for me, I mean, one thing my clients would always say to me was, Bri, you've been slim your whole life. I've always had an athletic build, so I've never, and I'm someone where I can eat whatever I want pretty much, and I'll never get past a certain weight. And so they would always say to me, you don't get what it's like. You don't get what it's like to be heavy. You don't get what it's like to have to diet extensively. You don't understand what it's like to, have your success depend on, what food you do or don't put into your mouth. And so, even though obviously I wasn't in a position where I could go and stack on all of this weight and then start from where they were, I knew that I could go through the process of dieting intensively and losing a significant amount of weight. So I jumped into a 16-week fitness modeling competition prep. And over that process, I lost about 20 kilos, which is crazy because I think I was sitting at about maybe 69 kilos.
Holy moly.
So I was tiny. And, the diet there was zero wriggle room, like it was so structured. Everything was weighed, everything was, perfectly timed, 6 meals a day, for those full 16 weeks. And so, I really went to the extreme in both understanding what it was like to, to lose a significant amount of weight, as well as what it is to really diet, extensively.
So where did this drive come from? Was that something you were taught? Because that's not something a lot of people are able to do, especially for that reason. I could understand if it was to lose weight, to get on a stage, to be maybe seen for the first time and to be seen in a particular light, but just to do that for the sake of figuring it out. Where does that come from?
Sorry, I'm muted for a second then. I think tech errors. Excuse me. I think for me, I grew up the only girl amongst all boys. I have an older brother. On our street, it was, all his friends lived on our street, so they were always hanging out. I didn't have any friends that lived on the street with us. All of my cousins were male, so I just kind of got used to being the runt of the litter, so to speak, and having to really fight to be seen and to be heard and to be acknowledged and recognized. And so I hate to say it, but I think a lot of it came from these deep-seated stories of, not fitting in and not being enough. And because of that, it sort of, birthed this drive in me that just meant that I would do whatever it took to get whatever it was that I wanted. And in many cases, it's been to my own detriment. It has been very destructive at times, but at the same time, I also think it's my greatest gift. So, yeah.
What are some of the negative impacts that's had on you, the not fitting in and not being enough?
That's actually a tough one to answer because, I'm a big believer that nothing is ever good or bad. It's how we choose to see it. I mean, looking back now, I can see where all of these kind of negative things that came as a result of that are also blessings. But I mean, at the time, it did lead me down a path of drug addiction. A lot of really, I guess, self-depreciating behaviors. So, there was a time in my life where I was very promiscuous. I was, looking for my worth in, the first guy that would pay me a bit of attention Yeah, drug use, like pretty extensive partying and binge drinking. And yeah, they're probably the main ones. I do remember going through, you know, a period of my life where it never got identified as this, but you know, a depression, a deep depression, and suicidal tendencies. Yeah, so I guess more of that, you know, that dark night of the soul, really finding myself and going through a process of almost numbing myself to try and cover up how much I didn't feel like I fit in.
Wow. How was there any shame and guilt that come off the back of that? Because I know, like
Yeah,
me being in the same position, I was burdened by shame and guilt, and they probably dictated how I showed up for maybe a decade. So, like, I'm interested to know if that came up and how you maybe worked through it or handled it.
yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, there was definitely huge elements of shame and guilt, especially, you know, because I went from one addiction to another. So I went from the drug use and the partying, and then there was kind of a period of time where it would be like, it was almost like I was two identities. I'd go from this personal trainer and eating really healthy and, you know, all about health during the week. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday was like binge drink, you know, take ecstasy, um, you know, eat whatever I wanted. And so it was like I was living these two separate identities. And then, yeah, I guess that was expressed through, it was like trying to keep the two worlds separate. So, you know, my gym, my clients, my friends from the gym, those people were completely kept in the dark about what I did on the weekend. And my friends that I would hang out with on the weekend were kept in the dark about, you know, what I would do for work. And you know, even when it came to marketing my PT stuff, I was very mindful about what I would and wouldn't put on social media, because I knew that some of my party friends might see it and they'd judge me for it. And, you know, like it was very much just never really fully stepping into who I was, because I felt like I was two different people. And so, I mean, it's been a process, owning that shame and guilt. A big part of it has been feeling it and just admitting to it. I think, you know, shame and guilt are incredible in the sense that they can only really exist if they remain hidden. And the moment we actually speak up about whatever's there for us, it's like, you know, it doesn't necessarily completely disappear, but then we go through this transmutation process where, you know, suddenly it just loses its charge. You know, as soon as we shine the light on the darkness, it just loses its charge. So that's been the main piece, really just speaking into it and being willing to go into the shadows.
Oh, that's going to be the outtake.
I love
That was a good rant. I love it. That was amazing, and I totally agree that like that's the only way that shame can exist, is if you keep burying it and don't acknowledge it and feel it. Like as
it.
I think a lot of our anxiety, especially around shame and guilt, comes from the avoidance of actually feeling it. So
Mm.
we have an assumption around what we think it's going to feel like, so we avoid the assumption, the
Mm.
assumed feeling, and that I guess that avoidance just creates anxiety and worry, which just perpetuates shame and guilt and keeps us in those destructive patterns of behavior. So that's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, I think one of the main things for me, and I've noticed this more and more as I've stepped into my coaching role, you know, on a deeper and deeper level. I think a lot of us think that we're the only one that feels this way. And so I know for me, you know, there was stuff that I wouldn't dream of telling anyone, because my story was I'm the only one who's been through this and no one else is going to get it. And everyone else has got their stuff figured out, because of course at that time, no one in my world was speaking up about this stuff. So, you know, it further outcasted me, because I had this story that I'm broken. No one else is going to get it. Everyone else is perfect. Everyone else has got their shit together. And the funny thing is, the more you speak up about this stuff, the more you start to realize, like, we're all going through the same shit. We've all got the same, you know, the same demons in our own maybe unique expression, but we're all going through the same fears, doubts, and insecurities, perhaps at different times in our lives. But they're actually the things that make us, you know, connected.
Yes, I love that. I think that's a pretty good segue into what you spoke about before we jumped on, which is some of the things that have helped you, and particularly two of them, one of them being somatic work and the other being more cognitive work. Can you walk us through the modalities that you used and how they impacted you?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, for me, the cognitive stuff was, you know, as you spoke about early on, it's looking more at how we process the world, how we think, what our stories and belief systems are. And so for me, you know, I went through hypnotherapy, did a little bit of NLP, you know, started off with all of that kind of stuff, and really just starting to understand some of what my deep-seated subconscious belief systems were and why my world had been created as it had. From there, I started to look into more of like the Dr. John Demartini, you know, his kind of processes, which are a lot more based on coming to see life for the beautiful balance of yin and yang that it is, and understanding that for every blessing there is a curse, and for every curse there is a blessing. And so, you know, coming back to like the shame piece and the guilt piece, starting to realize that for every negative action that I'd done or not done, every negative action or inaction, there was also an equal and opposite. So, you know, it benefited me to the same degree that it was a drawback for me. And then for those who were impacted by it, there was also beautiful lessons and blessings in it for them. And so coming to really see that, you know, ultimately all there is love, you know, and it's just as human beings, we start to create these stories based on associations and past experiences, and then we create meanings from that and all of these sorts of things. And when we really come back to it, it's just love. So that was the cognitive kind of process. And then from there, I kind of started to realize that I was so constantly taking like a mental inventory of everything that was occurring and always trying to figure things out and operating from a very logical place that I was almost disconnected from my body. You know, everything was like from the neck up, which of course, you know, disconnects you from your heart. It disconnects you from really being able to actually feel life. And I realized as well that it didn't matter how much cognitive work I did, there was still things going on that I wasn't aware of that I just couldn't quite seem to crack. And so that led me down the path of somatics. And somatics is looking more so at, you know, where certain emotions, where certain frequencies, where, you know, things like shame and guilt are actually stored in the cells. And so when I started to, you know, use more of that somatic work, so, you know, things like breath work, things like ecstatic dance, you know, primal screaming, and just really allowing myself to actually feel whatever was there rather than trying to always, you know, logic my way out of it. That was what really created the shift, because I was actually releasing those old trauma patterns from my body and allowing my nervous system to open up for more, you know, for more of the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, you know.
It's amazing. For someone in, I guess, for someone in a position where they feel like it's time for them to engage in something like that, but aren't yet ready to be vulnerable verbally, what would you recommend they try?
When you say not ready to be vulnerable verbally, do you mean to a coach?
Yeah, just in terms of not comfortable speaking about what they've gone through. Because
Yeah.
I think that's
Okay.
one of the powerful things about somatic work.
Yep.
But I'd love to know, I guess, what you think would be the most powerful for someone to use.
Yeah. I would say, I want to answer that by saying, you know, just practice really being there for yourself. Practice really just allowing yourself to feel. Because I think, you know, sometimes, and I know I've been this person, we're really quick to go, okay, I need someone to support me in this. I need someone to facilitate this. And a lot of the time, you know, we go back to looking outside of ourselves. And the truth is, a lot of the time we have it. We're all we need. And one of the most powerful and most cost effective, because it's free, methodologies is just sitting with it. So that means if something's upset you, go and, you know, take an hour, half an hour, 10 minutes, whatever you need, and actually just go feel it. you know, and just really, if that looks like crying, if that looks like laughing, if that looks like punching your pillow, if that looks like, you know, going down to the beach and letting out a primal scream, if whatever that looks like, if it looks like a mixture of all of the above, then do that, and take as long as you need until that emotion is processed. You know, one of the most powerful learnings for me was that most emotions take max 10 minutes to actually fully process. But what happens is we create stories about what that emotion might mean, or how we're going to be viewed, or we judge ourselves for it. And so we lock it down and we push it down and don't actually feel it. And so because we're not feeling it fully, the duration by which we feel it extends. And so it's this weight that we carry. Whereas if we just drop in and allow ourselves to just be sad for as long as we need to be sad, or just be angry for as long as we need to be angry, and don't fall into the trap of jumping on our phone or going and eating, or, you know, watching Netflix, when we can really just drop in and be with it, it flows through us. You know, emotion is energy in motion, so it just wants to flow.
Bang, boom. One thing before we jump on to like what you're offering now and how you're helping your clients is going back to, I guess, you growing up with your brother and all his friends being on the same road, not being enough, not fitting in. When we're talking about emotion, was that something you had to really work on, like having been brought up like that or growing up like that?
Definitely. I remember so many times where I'd cry and I'd just get teased for crying, you know, stop being a girl. And, you know, we grew up country as well, you know, so that real, you know, country, like tough mentality. Yeah, it was never okay to have emotions. And, you know, I think sadly as well, our parents' generation, that's not something that there was no space for that. So, you know, our generation is really having to learn how to feel. And so it's very much been, a real journey for me to actually be okay with having emotions and reprogramming. I think my thought process was always that, you know, if I cried or if I got angry, it meant that I didn't have it all figured out. And that then meant that, you know, I had some sort of a defect, or that I was broken, or, you know, and so coming to really recognize that it's actually something to celebrate, because it means that A, I'm human, and B, it means that I'm in the dance, you know, I'm in the arena, I'm living, I'm experiencing this gift that is life.
Oh, that's nice. And I do agree with that. Like, until you start feeling all the feelings and witnessing how quickly the emotion, the feeling, and your state can shift, I don't think you're fully living. You're avoiding living.
Yeah. You know, and it's funny because as I've allowed myself to feel more and more, this is going to sound really strange, but feeling sad is enjoyable. Feeling angry is enjoyable, you know, because it's, I don't know, there's this deep deliciousness in just feeling. And so even last night, I felt my housemates were all feeling a bit pissed off at the world. And so we went and did an anger release. And it was just like this super juicy, delicious experience of like, yes, we get to be angry, you know, and there's been so many times where, you know, I've had things happen in life which have triggered a sadness in me. And it's like, oh, I can't wait to get home and go cry, you know, which I know will sound totally bizarre to people, but the more you come to just accept emotions as what they are, the more there's actually a real deep love and enjoyment in all aspects of the human experience, the good, the bad, you know, all of it.
Yes. With anger, I'd love for you to run me through very quickly, like your process for expressing anger, because I know when a lot of people hear that, they'll tighten up and they'll close off, because anger is generally an emotion that we're not supposed to show, or an emotion that's not acceptable, especially in public.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of different ways. For me, you know, again, coming back to the story of, you know, that I was the only girl, I know for me a lot of the time anger comes up as my way to hide the fact that I'm feeling hurt. So sometimes expressing anger for me actually looks like crying. You know, and sometimes I've just got to allow myself to just drop in a little bit more, and it's, oh, okay, I'm actually feeling really hurt. And in terms of expressing anger itself, I mean, that can look like a primal scream. So I'll go down to the beach and I'll, you know, middle of the night, a lot of the time, go down to the beach and just yell. Last night, it looked like my housemate messaged me and said, I've got a cricket bat. Who wants to have a little anger release upstairs? So we set up, you know, just a stack of pillows, got the cricket bat, turned on some loud, angry music, and just like beat the crap out of these pillows. And I mean, obviously, there's yelling and whatever else. So, you know, maybe let the neighbours know. Otherwise, it might result in the cops being called. But yeah, it's just, the beautiful thing about anger is the more we allow ourselves to feel it in a way that is safe and conscious, the less we react when we're in the height of, you know, of that triggering. And, you know, for me, I grew up, because I was so suppressed as a kid, I grew up very angry. And I mean, I don't know how much you remember of me, Bridge, but a lot of the feedback I got from other people, you know, at the workshop was that I looked angry, you know, I looked very cold and walled up. And I didn't realize how much people actually saw that and felt that in me. And so, you know, I would find a lot of the time if something would tip me over the edge, it was like pouring gasoline on fire, to the point that I would often lose control, and it would look like holes in walls and things like that, because it was almost like I'd stepped out of my body for a moment and I was watching myself do it with no control. And it's only been since I've actually practiced consciously releasing that anger, you know, even through things like kickboxing, you know, more of the martial arts based stuff, as well as that, you know, the primal screaming and the anger releases. It's only been through those processes of really allowing myself to go there that I don't find that I have such a intense experience, you know, when something does trigger me into anger.
Huge. And I think a big part of that too, especially with anger, because it's for the most part seen as aggressive, and aggression to most people and anger to most people puts them off or makes them close up as well, or judge. I think a big part of that is, like you said, talking to your neighbors and especially communicating to the people who are going to be closest to you. What I've found is that, like, I can tell my daughter and my partner, look, I'm just going to go in the room. Can you not come in for a bit? I'm going to do some anger release. Or tell my daughter, Daddy's angry. He's going in the room. Don't come in. And it's acceptable. And now it's just part of the process. It's not something that scares them or makes them anxious, because they're no longer making my anger about them and how they're not enough or what they're doing wrong. It's just about me being angry and expressing it. So that's huge. And by the way, Bridge, that feedback is fucking it's harsh. I got scared, little boy.
Oh. Oh. Yeah, that was a full-on experience.
Okay, let's get into what it is that you offer with your coaching, like who you're helping and what you're helping them through.
Beautiful. Can I rewind for a moment? There's just something sitting on my heart that I want to say. You know, with the anger stuff, I think, you know, I've witnessed a lot of domestic violence in my life. You know, people who've either been affected by it or, you know, myself being directly affected by it in certain ways. And, you know, I think that's what brings up a lot of the fear around anger. And the thing is, and speaking from experience of being someone who, you know, when I hit that point, when I hit that threshold with my anger, it's like throwing, you know, fuel on the fire. What happens for people is when they're not able to be with their anger, we go into a fight or flight response. And that's where we do have that experience of literally, it's like being out of our body and the body is acting where we're not consciously able to control it. And so, you know, like you said, I think a lot of people will almost like tighten up and want to run from this topic. But the incredible thing is the further into it we go, the less we, you know, the more we're able to actually hold it and consciously stay present in the experience. And so I think it's so important that people recognize that, in my mind, the solution to things like domestic violence is actually going there and doing it in that safe container, because then we build the body that can handle it and not start to lash out in this, you know, fight or flight response, not lash out in, you know, completely instinctual ways with no cognitive, you know, conscious thought process going on. So I feel like that's an important thing to say. Because yeah, I mean, the only way out is through, and the deeper we go into it, the less it has control over us.
Yes, I love it. I love these little tangents or these little nuggets of gold you're throwing up. So back to your services, I guess.
Yeah. So sorry, what was the question? What do I offer?
Yeah, just in terms of like, who are you helping? What are you providing, and what are you helping them through?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a personal freedom coach. So what that looks like is ultimately supporting people in, first of all, getting really clear on who they are, who they're here to be, what their unique message is. I wholeheartedly believe everyone is put on this earth with a unique message and a unique purpose. And so it's getting them to, first of all, really connect with that. And then, you know, start to own their power in that. I see so many people who are always looking outside of themselves and giving their power away. And when we can come back to ourselves and own who we're here to be, we start to create this beautiful flow state in our life where, you know, things like money and the relationships and, you know, the abundance on all levels, connection, you know, the material abundance, all of those things start to effortlessly just keep flowing in. You know, I think of life as almost a machine, and if one cog's out, then everything's out. But once you get that machine well oiled and, you know, working smoothly, everything just flows. So more than anything, it's about getting people to own that the freedom exists within them once they own who they are.
Pow. Pow. I love that. And that's so true too. It is so true. We spend most of our lives, or most of us anyway, spend most of our lives, I know I have, searching for external validation, when really the validation I need is internally the fact that I'm enough.
Yeah. That's the big piece. We're all looking outside of ourselves, but when we just come back to our center, we have everything we need.
All right. I guess probably coming to the end of this one, buddy. So I'll give you a couple wrap-up questions.
Mm-hmm.
What are you most grateful for right now?
This work.
Yes, that was quick.
Yeah. I'm just so present at the moment with how beautiful it is to just get to, you know, to be in a space where I just get to keep meeting myself on a deeper and deeper level. And as a result, getting to meet the outside world on a much deeper level.
Bang. What do you love about yourself?
All of it. The good, the bad, the ugly.
Yes.
Even the stuff I don't love. Love that too.
What are you proud of about yourself and what you've accomplished?
What am I proud of? I'm proud that I never gave up. I feel like I had feel like I had the entire world against me for a while there, self-imposed. But you know, here I am, and I pinch myself every day of holy fuck. Like everything I have now, it feels like it was inevitable, but at the same time, there was always that, you know, is it a pipe dream? And so to have it right here in front of me is like, fuck yeah.
Yes. When you go, and I'm hoping that's in like 60 plus years, when you leave this meat suit existence, what do you, or how do you want to be perceived?
I want people to see me as the example of what it is to be a human being.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I want people to go, oh, yep, all of it. Good, bad, ugly. I know I keep repeating myself in that sense, but I yeah, I want people to just see someone who is willing to just be completely unapologetically human.
If you were to put a message on a billboard for thousands of people to see every day, what would that message be?
Know thyself.
Know thyself?
Yes.
Oh, how did that come up so quickly?
Because it was one of the things one of my earliest mentors said to me, and it's always stuck with me. And funnily enough, I don't have it in front of me, but I've just finished reading the book Conversations with God. And also I've been watching a documentary series on Netflix about gods and aliens, and sort of, going back into like ancient cultures and understanding the wisdom that they had, which appears to be so much further on than where we're at as a civilization now. And in all these cases, it just keeps coming up, the Greek saying, know thyself. And so, yeah, I think it was just fresh on my mind, and it feels super relevant right now.
Yeah, quick draw. It's like a Western shoot off. But to wrap this up, I just want to acknowledge you for taking the time, first of all. I don't know why it's taken so long to get you on this, because you have been my cuddle buddy since November, December last year. And I've seen your growth. I've seen the good you're putting out into the world, seen your transformation and this powerful beast that you've become. But I'm really grateful to have you in my life, like I said at the start, and just want to acknowledge you for this constant growth, this constant progression, and just constantly leaning into your edges. It's fucking awesome to watch.
Oh, you're gonna make me emotional. I can feel it starting to bubble up. Thank you. Yeah, and you know what? I want to say the same for you. I've witnessed your journey, and you're someone who you're a standout from those 2 weekends. You're someone who fucking went there. You really. I remember. I think it was that. I think it was the first day of Extreme. You stood up and did your thing, and I was like, fuck, this dude is a leader. And I think witnessing that, you served as the example and the permission slip for other people to follow suit. And I've just watched you, transform in leaps and bounds. And I really wholeheartedly believe you're going to keep doing fucking incredible things in the world.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Make me feel so giddy. All right, buddy. You have a good day.
You too.